You make $16 an hour standing on the shoulder of County Road 9, turning a paddle sign from Eslo to Stop and Back for a construction crew that has been milling the same half-mile of asphalt for 11 days. Across the road, bolted to 2 steel poles in a fallow field, there's a plain white billboard advertising a personal injury lawyer out of the county seat. You have stared at that board for 11 days. You know its rust pattern better than you know your own driveway. What the drivers idling in front of you do not know, what the flagger behind you does not know, is that the board is yours. Not the lawyer's, not the field owner's, yours. It brought in $850 last month. A single check mailed to a post office box for a piece of steel you have not touched since March. It starts 2 years earlier, on the same stretch of road, a different job, resurfacing instead of milling. You were 24, already 3 seasons into flagging, and the only scenery for 8 hours a day was 2 of these boards, the lawyer's and, a quarter-mile up, an older one for a self-storage place that had gone blank, just gray primer and a phone number nobody had painted over yet. A woman named Wanda started stopping her truck at the cone line most mornings, not because of the construction, but because her route ran this road anyway. She had a ladder rack and rolls of vinyl in the bed, and it took you 4 mornings of small talk to learn she wasn't a sign painter for hire. She owned 6 of these boards herself, little ones, the kind nobody in a city ever looks twice at, along back roads exactly like this one. She said maintaining one cost her almost nothing most years. She said the steel was the boring part. The land under it was the whole trick. You couldn't picture owning a billboard. Billboards were a company thing, a logo on a truck door thing. But you kept turning the sign, and you kept looking at that blank storage board, and one slow afternoon you asked Wanda straight out how a person even starts. She laughed, not unkindly, and told you the real bottleneck first. You cannot build a new billboard face on most state and federal roads anymore. The permits stopped decades ago in a lot of counties, grandfathered boards only, which sounds like bad news until you understand what it actually means. It means a handful of boards already standing are worth more than the steel they're welded from because nobody can build a competitor next to them, ever. The only way in, she said, is buying an old one off somebody who's done with it, structure and permit together, like buying a taxi medallion. Nobody prints anymore. The storage board belonged to a man named Hollis, 71, who had put up 11 boards across 2 counties starting in the 80s and was down to running 4 of them alone, badly, because his knees had stopped letting him climb the ladder to swap vinyl. Wanda knew him the way everyone in this business seems to know everyone else, which you were starting to suspect was actual infrastructure. She made the introduction. Hollis wanted $12,000 for the storage board, the steel, the permit, and the lease. $180 a month he paid the field's owner for the 10 square feet of dirt the poles stood in. You had $4,100 saved, most of it from 3 flagging seasons and 1 winter running a plow route on the side. Hollis looked at the number, looked at you, and said he'd take $4,000 down and the rest at $200 a month for 34 months, no interest, because he'd rather see the board go to somebody who'd actually climb the ladder than sit blank for another year. You signed in his kitchen. His wife made coffee. Nobody used the word investment once. The board sat blank for 6 weeks after that, which nobody warned you is the normal part. You called 11 businesses off a list you wrote yourself, driving the county with a notebook, a chiropractor, a tire shop, 2 churches, a boat dealer, a taco truck that turned out not to have a phone number that worked. 10 of them said no, 2 small, 2 far off the interstate, 1 guy hung up mid-sentence. The 11th was a different self-storage company, a regional chain expanding into the county, and their marketing manager, a woman named Priya, said the exact thing Wanda had predicted almost word for word. Storage companies buy dumb, cheap, boring roadside signage constantly because a board a mile from their gate converts better than anything they run online. She signed a 12-month contract at $600 a month. Printing and installing the new vinyl face cost you $430, most of it labor, because you paid a sign shop in the county seat to do the climb since your ladder skills were, charitably, unproven. The math after that first year was not exciting. And that turned out to be the point. $600 a month in rent, minus $180 for the land lease, minus insurance you'd been talked into by an agent Wanda referred you to, $22 a month for a policy covering the structure if it fell on somebody's truck in a storm, left you around $380 a month before the vinyl reprint, which you'd need again roughly every 2 years at $430. Call it $360 a month, net, from one blank piece of steel Hollis had been too tired to climb. It was not enough to change your life. It was enough to understand, standing there with a paddle sign in your hand watching your own board across the road 11 months later, that money could arrive from a direction that had nothing to do with how many hours you stood on a shoulder. The second board came from a bundle. Hollis, it turned out, still had 2 more boards he wanted gone, both on a county road 40 minutes north, both leased to nobody. He'd take $9,000 for the pair, seller financed the same way, and by then you'd made every payment on the first board on time, which apparently counts for more with a man like Hollis than any credit score ever would. The third board you built new would surprise even Wanda, on a strip of frontage along a 2-lane road where the county still issued permits because it wasn't a designated scenic corridor and traffic counts were decent. A steel company in the next county quoted you $6,200 for a small, single-pole structure, and the landowner, a retired dairy farmer with frontage he wasn't using for anything, signed a lease for $140 a month, thrilled someone wanted his ditch line for something. An accountant named Deb, who Wanda had used for 11 years, set you up with an LLC for $90 in filing fees and told you 2 things that stuck. First, every board needed to be in the company's name, and every land lease needed to name the company as the tenant, because a storm-toppled board that hurts somebody becomes a lawsuit, and a lawsuit needs a target with real assets to reach, which 4 steel signs and a bank account were, and your truck and your paycheck were not. Second, keep flagging for now, not for the money, which was smaller each year relative to the boards, but because the job came with health insurance and because a bank underwriting your first real loan someday would want to see a W-2 sitting next to the LLC's tax return, not instead of it. You wrote both down on the same notepad you'd used to call 11 businesses off a list. The bad year came when a regional outdoor advertising company, the kind that owns the big lit boards along the interstate, sent a man named Kurt to your door with an offer to buy all 5 of your boards for $31,000, structures, permits, and leases, cash, 30 days to close. $31,000 was more money at once than you had ever seen, and for 4 days you were sure you'd take it. Then Deb ran the number, the other direction. 5 boards, clearing roughly $1,800 a month combined after leases and insurance, was already worth more than $31,000 if you simply kept it 17 months and changed nothing. Kurt's offer wasn't a scam, exactly. It was correctly priced for a company that could refinance permits into a portfolio and borrow against it at a rate you couldn't. It was badly priced for you. You told Kurt no. He said the offer wouldn't come around twice. It hasn't, and you have not needed it to. Growth after that stayed boring on purpose, the way Wanda had warned you it would if you were doing it right. 1 board bought or built roughly every year. Each one paid in full from the portfolio's own rent before the next one started. No debt beyond Hollis's original patient note, which he finished paying off in month 31, a year and change ahead of schedule. Advertisers came mostly from other advertisers, the way Pria's storage company told a competing storage company 2 counties over, the way one chiropractor mentioned it to another at a conference. You learned to stop calling the board small. Small was doing $3,100 a month, across 8 of them by the time you'd been at this 5 years, which was more than double what County Road 9 paid you to hold a sign. People who hear about the boards always ask the same question, and it's the wrong one. What's the trick? There isn't a trick. There's a permit, and a lease, and a face, and each one has its own arithmetic, and once you know it, it stops looking like magic and starts looking like plumbing. The permit is the scarce part, the reason a 50-year-old piece of steel is worth more than new steel would cost to build, because in most counties nobody can build beside it, ever, full stop. The land lease is almost always cheap, $100 to $200 a month to a landowner who was doing nothing with that corner anyway, and the moment you stop paying it, the whole board stops existing, so you pay it first, before anything else, every month, automatically. The face is the only part that ever needs real work, printing vinyl every 2 to 3 years, finding the next advertiser before the current contract lapses, and understanding that your actual customers are never national brands who buy the giant digital boards from companies with sales floors, but local businesses with a 5 to 40 mile service radius. Storage companies, injury lawyers, tourist attractions, boat dealers, the exact unglamorous list you'd cold called from a notebook. 8 boards renting for an average of $550 each, minus an average $160 in land lease and $30 in insurance, is roughly $3,000 a month of arithmetic standing in a field that nobody driving past has ever once looked at twice. There was a counter-example, and Wanda made sure you heard it. A family 2 counties over had inherited 4 boards from a grandfather, permits and all, worth easily what your whole portfolio was worth, and instead of running them the slow way, they sold the entire package to a consolidator for $22,000, badly underpriced, because nobody in the family understood what a grandfathered permit was actually scarce enough to be worth, and the consolidator knew exactly what he was buying. Wanda didn't tell you the story to make you feel clever. She told you because she said the whole business runs on one asymmetry. Almost nobody who inherits or stumbles into one of these boards understands what it is, and almost everybody who buys one on purpose, patiently, the way you had, ends up understanding it completely, and that gap is where all the money in this particular corner of the world quietly sits. You gave your notice on the flagging crew in September, 4 years in, the portfolio at 9 boards clearing just under $3,500 a month, 12 months of expenses sitting untouched in the LLC's account the way Deb had insisted on before you were allowed to call it real. Your supervisor, a decent man named Ortiz, who trained you on your first day with a paddle sign, asked what you were moving on to, and you said sign maintenance, self-employed, which was true in the driest possible sense, and answered exactly nothing, which was the idea. Your last shift ended on a Friday in the rain. You drove home past both original boards, Hollis's storage board and the lawyer's, both still standing, both still collecting, neither one aware that anything about you had changed at all. You found Hollis again that winter, still in the same kitchen, knees no better, 4 boards down to 0 now, since he'd sold you the last of them the previous spring. You brought coffee and told him the whole run, the storage board, the bundle, the one you built new, Kurt's offer, all 9 boards and what they cleared now. He listened the way you remembered, patient, half amused, and when you thanked him for taking $4,000 down on a man he'd met 3 days earlier, he shook his head and said you had it backwards. He hadn't taken a chance on you. He'd watched you show up to flag that road every single morning for 11 straight days in weather that would have sent most 24-year-olds home sick, and he said a man who shows up like that for $16 an hour shows up like that for anything. The boards were never the risk. You were the collateral, and you didn't even know it. It's an ordinary Tuesday now, a different road, a crew you don't work for anymore driving past a storage board on their lunch break without a glance. The lawyer's board across from your old post on County Road 9 has a new face on it this year, a dentist now, $690 a month, a check that will arrive whether or not anyone ever again stands on that shoulder holding a paddle sign. 9 boards, 140 miles apart at the widest, none of them lit, none of them digital, none of them anything a person driving 70 miles an hour would ever slow down to notice. That was always the whole appeal. Nobody envies a blank piece of steel in a field. Nobody competes for it, complains about it, or asks to see the numbers behind it. It just stands there quietly doing arithmetic while you are somewhere else entirely. And the only person who ever really saw it coming was a woman with a ladder rack who noticed you were the one flagger on that road who said good morning. If this kind of quiet arithmetic is your kind of story, the subscribe button is right there, and it costs exactly nothing, which is the best price this channel knows. A new one arrives tomorrow. Same time, same desk, different machine.